So by now, I'm sure that everyone has seen the video and has heard about the situation with Tyreek Hill, the Miami Dolphins superstar wide receiver who was arrested on Sunday on his way to the game. He was driving, he was driving his car, and I guess he was speeding. I assume that that's what the officer alleged he was doing, was speeding, right? And because the officer on a motorcycle pulled beside him, he said something about speeding, and he told him to pull over, right? So Tyreek Hill, he pulled over. The officer came and knocked on his window. Boom, 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 boom. And so on Sunday, prior to the Dolphins versus Jacksonville Jaguars game, when Tyreek was on his way to the game, he was driving his black sports car, expensive sports car, and the officer on a motorcycle gets beside him and tells him to pull over. I think I heard him say, "Why?" or something. The officer said, "Because you were speeding." So Tyreek Hill, like, all right. The officer said, "Pull over right there." So Tyreek Hill, he pulls over. The officer then goes to the window. Boom, 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 boom. Knocks on the window. Tyreek Hill say, "Man, don't knock on my window like that. Don't knock on my window like that." The officer then tells him that he was knocking on the window because he had to let him know that he was there, as if he didn't know he was there because the guy just told him to pull over. So I'm sure Tyreek Hill knew he was there because the police is the one who told him to pull over, right? Now, please don't think that I'm saying that, that Tyreek Hill couldn't have just handled it a little better too, by letting him do what he do. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what they're going to do. But let's get down to the nitty gritty of it, is the fact that the officer came knocking on the window. That's common. They'll come knocking on the window. But for what reason? When he just told him to pull over. So Tyreek Hill knows that the officer is there because the officer just told him to pull over, right? That's no secret. That's all on the video. So now Tyreek Hill, he pulls over. He say, "Man, don't knock on my window like that." Officer say, "What?" He said, "Don't knock on my window like that." So the officer, as if he's scaring Tyreek, is like, "What you say? What do you say?" Tyreek said, "Man, I said don't knock on my window like that." And this is why I say I feel like the officer, they just do too much, right? This is why. Because the officer already knew. First of all, let's just say this here. I don't know this part, but we're going to assume this part, that the officer knew that that was Tyreek Hill. Because he probably ran his plates, right? Probably ran his plates, so he knows it's Tyreek Hill. Now, with that part being said, he pulls him over. He goes to Tyreek Hill, knocks on the window, all that other stuff. Okay. That's neither here nor there, to knock on the window. Tyreek Hill tell him not to knock on his window like that. Okay. Why would he tell him not to knock on his window like that? Maybe because he's driving a very expensive car and the officer's just knocking like that. Okay, I don't know. I'm just assuming right now. So I'm not stating facts. I'm not stating facts because I was not there, and I'm not going to be just saying stuff out my head because I got a mouth on my face, right? both sides have to take responsibility for the part that they played in the negative interaction with law enforcement, right? Both sides. Now, so he tells Tyreek, after Tyreek give him his license, Tyreek rolls the window back up. That's common. I have done it many times. If they only ask me for my license, I'm going to give my license. I'm going to roll window back up, and I'm going to enjoy the air conditioner, right? But he tells Tyreek to roll his window back down. For what? For what? If I presented any type of threat to you, you would have told me to get out the car, right? Anybody who know about law enforcement and have been pulled over, Junior Holt said cops did an awesome job. Hill should have followed commands. All right, you entitled to your opinion, sir. You definitely entitled to your opinion. And it was unnecessary military tactics on a civilian, period. That's what Rael said. Disrespectful. Why did he get pulled over? See, because when we seen the video, I didn't see him speeding. So the question is, why did he get pulled over? That's the question, Junior Hope. Why did he get pulled over? See, because Black people in America, we face this problem every single day. Every single day. Rael said, I know, I'm not a Dolphins fan. They did it because he is Black. And see, driving while Black is why. He got pulled over for being Black in Florida. Simple as that. I'm not either. I've experienced it more than once. Listen, I've experienced being pulled over so many times. I've had police get behind me and drag and follow me for miles, literally, and then finally pull me over and say that I failed to stop at the stop sign. And I say, officer, so you think that I didn't stop at the stop sign when I know you've been following me this whole time, and I just didn't stop at the stop sign while you follow me? So this is a common harassment that we face every single day. And so now, here it is, this football player. I don't care if you're a star football player or a minor league football player. It don't make a difference to me. We're talking about the law. We're talking about harassment. We're talking about whether or not the police overstepped his bounds, whether he was unnecessarily aggressive, whether he was doing too much. That's what I'm talking about. I don't care about it being Tyreek Hill or somebody who society deems a nobody. So the officer then tells him to roll his window down. After he done gave him his ID, the officer's supposed to be going back there to check his ID, right? Or his license, rather. He followed the instruction. There you go, officer. He said, go on, take care of your business. Do what you're going to do. The officer's ego seems to come into play from what I heard and what I seen with my own eyes and heard with my own ears. The officer like, roll that window back down. He like, first of all, let's go back. Do you all remember when the officer walked up to the car and he said, why didn't you have your seatbelt on? How did he see that? How did he see that, y'all? The officer walked up to Tyreek Hill's car. Think about this. He's coming from the back of the car. Tyreek Hill is in a two-seater sports car. Two-seater sports car. The officer is coming from the back of the car. And he walked up to the window and he said, why don't you have your seatbelt on? Now, we was watching the same video. He had his eyes on the car. We was watching the same thing that his eyes was watching. We was watching from his body cam. How did he see that this man didn't have a seatbelt on? Huh? Somebody talk to me. Somebody talk to me, please. Did anybody else see whether or not this man had a seatbelt on. Did anybody see the car speeding? Because I seen the same body cam that it was from the body cam from the officer. So now the body cam becomes the officer's eyes. And what I seen on the body cam is a car that was going at a moderate rate, so moderate that an officer was able to pull up on a motorcycle and actually talk to a guy and hold a conversation with a guy while the guy was driving. So at what point was he speeding? At what point was he speeding? Jonah Finn something. I apologize for not pronouncing your name right. The chest cam doesn't swivel like a head. Oh, well, we already know that. But the chest cam catches what's in front of you, though. So if I had a chest cam on my chest right now, I can see myself on this video. So if a car is in front of me right now, I can see that car. If a car is right here, I can see that car. If a car is speeding, I can see that car. Because I'm behind that car or on the side of that car, I can see that car. See, we're not going to let them off the hook with this nonsense that they keep doing every time that we got them catch them red-handed with these lies and this corruption. We're not going to let them off the hook this time. Why did he pull them over? Again, I'm going to go back to the seatbelt. He walked up to the man's car. He said, "Why didn't you have a seatbelt on?" Wow. How did you know he didn't have a seatbelt on? How could you see from behind? We looking from your body camera and we can't see. How did you see, officer? The cop was wrong in sitting at a desk. This could have been way worse. It said, "You hate cops too, don't you?" No, I don't, sir. I don't hate cops. I don't hate anyone. Believe me. I have not a hateful bone in my body for people because it takes up too much of my energy. I have a righteous bone in my body. I have a humanitarian bone in my body. I have a traumatized bone in my body. I have a familiarized bone in my body, familiar with police harassment, police corruption, systemic racism. I'm very familiar with that type of stuff. But even then, I don't blanket all officers as bad. I don't blanket all white people as bad. No, there's bad apples in every tree. And I call out those bad apples, wherever they be, whoever they be. If they was related to me, if it's a bad apple, it's a bad apple. Sir, turn down your volume for me, please. Can you please do that? I apologize if anyone think I'm yelling, because I'm not trying to yell. That's just me. I'm animated. I'm animated. Believe me. When I see stuff like this type of corruption, it triggers me. Somebody said he had tents. How would he know his race? Well, that license plate don't have tents on it. That license plate have letters and numbers on it that you could just run and you could say, well, if this is the person that's in the car, his race is this or his race is that. His gender is this, his gender is that. That's how people know that, So just, and again, I don't want people to think that I'm criticizing you for having your opinion. I don't, because everyone is entitled to their opinion. The way that I see it may not be the way that you see it, and vice versa. And I respect that. But if you know that this officer on camera has not shown a reason to pull this man over, anything after that illegal traffic stop falls under the fruit of the poisonous tree. That's a doctrine in the law. Anything that happens after that, so even if he didn't have a license, even if it was some type of drug in the car, even whatever, if he did not have reason to pull him over, everything else becomes a wash. It's fruit of the poisonous tree and it cannot be used. So, again, okay, Biggity G, you say stop. The cops did right. What did he pull him over for then, Biggity G? Biggity G, what did he pull him over for? Maybe you have the answers that a lot of us don't. I'm asking. Where's the video of him driving recklessly? I want to see that video too. Because it's videos all up and down that street. Where's the video of him driving recklessly? Where's the video of him speeding? Why can't we see on the video that he didn't have on a seatbelt? Too many questions, not enough answers. Speeding 50 and a 40. When? Please, speeding 50 and a 40. When did you see that? Because I didn't see it. I think I seen the same video that the world seen. And the world is asking the same question. Where's the video? When was he speeding? Where was he speeding at? Racial profiling. He said, Craig Smith said, bro, you tripping. I'm tripping, huh? I'm tripping because I'm asking a question. Where's the video of him speeding at? I didn't say he was not speeding or he was speeding. I'm saying if the officers pulled him over for speeding, where's the video of him speeding at? That's my question. It says YouTube has a video from the beginning. Cops just sitting, waiting. Thank you. I got the same video. Cops was just sitting on the motorcycles. They was just waiting. I watched the same video like 6.5 minutes. So again, the officers then pull him over or have him pull over for that matter. He pulled over, voluntarily pulled over because they told him to pull over. He knocking on the window. He tell him, don't knock on my window like that. Gave him his driver's license, rolled his window back up, and he chilling. He chilling because he got a right to chill because he ain't did nothing wrong. See, when you ain't did nothing wrong, you ain't got nothing but rights. And even when you did something wrong, rights still apply. But in this case, the brother didn't even do nothing wrong. Not from what we seen, the camera that the officers presented. This is not something that Tyreek said. This is not something that someone else said. This is what the officers presented. And what the officers presented is evidence that Tyreek Hill did absolutely nothing wrong. He followed their instruction. They said, pull over. He pulled over. They said, give me your license. He gave him his license. He rolled his window back up. But usually when they get a license, they go back to the car, check the license out, do whatever. But in this case, the officer didn't just want to go back to his car. It's like he had a bone to pick or something. Maybe when Tyreek Hill rolled down that window and he seen the skin tone of this guy, knowing whom it was in the first place, he said he shouldn't be driving this car around here like this. What are you doing with this expensive car? I don't know. I'm just assuming because I've been a victim of this type of police harassment and illegally pulling me over and things like that. I understand how the mindset of the officers because I've been a victim of it too many times. I don't know in that specific case, but I think I can relate to it. I think that I'm qualified to speak on what I think the officers was thinking at the time. I think that the officers was thinking that who the hell is this black guy driving in this car like this? And so they pulled behind him or pulled beside him, had him pull over, knocked on his window, got his ID. Ego came into play when he wanted to roll his window back up because he clear. See, when you clean and you legal, ain't no sweat off your brow. And that's how he played him. There you go. Take care of your business. Do what you got to do. All right. He said, because I got to go. Also, like, hold on. You go when I tell you to go. He said, roll that window back down. I said, oh, roll that window back down. Now, here it is, the police telling the black guy to roll that window back down when the black guy know he did not do anything wrong. Didn't do anything wrong. He's in a public place. He wasn't, no evidence of him speeding. No evidence of him doing anything wrong except trying to get to his football game so he could play his game of football, which he loved, which he grew up playing. Rick, you say he was speeding and what? Because I didn't see the video. The officers have not presented a video. The only video that's ever been shown so far is the officers laying in wait, like they was waiting on somebody to get somebody. Come on, man. So now the officer ego come into play because Tyreek wanted to roll his window up. So the officer like, now you got to get out the car. And y'all seen it. The officer got very aggressive, opened the door, pulled him out the car. And then he got to hollering at him like you know what they do. Hollering at him like they really, really tough. You know, they too tough for TV. Real talk. Corrupt cops are too tough for TV. There are a lot of great cops. There are a lot of good cops. They try to keep the peace and maintain good relationships with people, treat people humane. But them corrupt ones, boy, they speak from nothing but their ego. They speak from nothing but that false pride. They too tough for TV and shouldn't have a job with a badge on. Unless that badge, well, I ain't even going to go there. But they shouldn't even be working. And so now they pull this brother out the car, holler all in his face, take him down, and they tell him he don't do what he want to do. He do what they tell him to do. Some egotistical stuff, you know, some of that military trauma, that slave mentality, indoctrination. And I don't care if he Mexican, I wouldn't care if he black, I wouldn't care if he white. It's all mean the same thing. If you corrupt, you corrupt. It's black corruption, white corruption, Chinese, and every other corruption. So we're not going to even get off into that. Now, then they want him to sit on the curb, lay on the curb, whatever. He say, man, I just had surgery on my knee. They don't care. Grab him from behind. There it is right there. You see it behind. They grab him from behind. Take him down like that. For what? He's been compliant. For what? He's been compliant. Graham W. Living the Dream said they did a good job. Graham, and I don't mean this in a racist way, but I wonder, are you white? I just wonder. Because that's the most people on here that's saying that the cops did a good job. White. He said, I think the cop was more jerk than the racist. I think so too. You know what? I think so too. But when I spoke of the racist aspect, I was speaking of the actual pulling him over, running his plate, saying that it's a black guy, that aspect. But the other interactions, I don't think was based on racism. It was based on jerkism. You know, the officer was a knucklehead. You know, it's what they do. They say, lock him up. I'm white. Hold on. Somebody said, I'm white. The cops did a reprehensible job. A reprehensible job. If it were Tom Brady, this wouldn't have happened. Oh my God. If it was Tom Brady, if it was Matthew Stafford, if it was what's that Kelch, whatever his name is, go with Taylor Swift. If it was Kelch, would this have happened? If it was Matthew Stafford, would this have happened? If this was Tom Brady, would this have happened? Dan Marino, would this have happened? Any of them, what's that other guy name? Used to play for Green Bay, both of them brothers. Y'all know who I'm talking about. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, even though I'm not a Green Bay fan at all. But if it was one of them, would this have happened? See, that's the question that we have to ask ourselves, because then once we can ask the tough questions, we can get to the easy answers. But if we're not willing to ask the tough questions because we hide behind our race, or we hide behind our false egos and our false pride, or we hide behind our fears, because we know that race is a topic that people just don't like to talk about. And most people who don't like to talk about race have some type of fear surrounding that subject, that they will be exposed, or that they're not willing to stand up against disparities, inequalities. And again, I'm not saying that was the driving force in this situation. But when you're talking about the overall system of police interaction with so-called Blacks and Latino people, it's based on race. Okay. What it say? Dawayad 7 said, did y'all see the new footage? I seen the new footage. I just seen it this morning. And the new footage further buries the officers. And you know, the greatest thing about this is that the officer have been temporarily dealt with, right? But it's not over. It's not over because this situation had to happen to bring a brighter light to the issue. It had to happen to someone of Tyreek's stature for the smaller people to receive the residual benefits of checking the police, right? Because the smaller people go through this every single day. They don't drive $400,000 and $500,000 cars. They don't have $1 million contracts. No. We drive regular cars. We got regular jobs. We try to get to and from a job. We try to take care of our family. And so any contact with the police that we have from this ground level where we live at, we don't live in houses on the hills. So we dealing with the police down here every single day. And guess what? Every single day that we're dealing with these police, we see that there is a problem. So here's an officer that says, why didn't you have your seatbelt on? Come on. He said that to a guy before he even looked into the car, before the window was even rolled down. He said, why didn't you have your seatbelt on? So imagine the problems that we deal with every single day when we have our seatbelts on. Video shows that these officers was sitting and waiting on their motorcycles for somebody to drive by that they could pull over. That's what the video showed. This is not me. I'm telling you what I seen on video. And I'm sure that if anybody have even which say stop breaking the law. Right. I bet you you are YT also. But anybody with good eyes and impartial vision seen the same thing I seen. The man, he gave the man his license. He just rolled his window back up. He wasn't trying to be a smart A or anything like that. He wasn't trying to be sarcastic or rebellious or anything. He was literally trying to get to the game. Because remember, he's the superstar wide receiver on Miami Dolphins. He's trying to get to the stadium so he can put his stuff on so he can play the game. So naturally, he's in a rush to get to the game. The officer pulls him over. He's in a rush. That's it. He ain't trying to be no a-hole or no jerk or anything like that. He gave the officers his information. He said, take care of your business. Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. He didn't say F you. He didn't say F y'all. I don't like none of y'all. I ain't got to do what you said. He said, here, take care of your business. And he tried to roll his window back up. He said, as an officer, he said, as a veteran officer of 18 years, these officers were out of effing order. That's what I say. If he wasn't speeding, would he have been pulled over? Wow. He rolled it back up when they walked away with this info. That's all he did. When they walked away, he rolled his window back up. If he wasn't speeding, would he have been pulled over? They were in the wrong for throwing him. Somebody say, just comply. See, that's the problem that I have with people today. People would say, just comply. Just follow the instruction. That's easy for you to say when you've never been in the shoes of the victim. Just follow the instructions. It's just sad. What did he say? He said, why don't you mention Tyree Nichols ever? You don't want to talk about that, huh? Oh, my God. Well, you got to follow me. Maybe you should press follow and share out my live feed. That's what you do. Share out my live feed, y'all. Share out my live feed. And I ask that any and everybody who has not or do not follow me on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, follow me. I talks about all this stuff. I don't pull no punches. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I don't like people who try to shy away from their responsibility. I don't like people who don't want to be held accountable for their actions, but they want to hold everybody else accountable. I don't like that. I don't care if you're red, white, or blue. That means nothing to me. What means something to me is this right here and this right here. If you ain't got none of this and you ain't using this, then we got a problem. I'm probably not even going to deal with you. So that's just me. And I don't care if you're red, white, or blue, big, tall, fat, or small. It don't matter to me. I love people. I represent people. I fight on behalf of people. I don't look at where the people came from, what the people's skin tone is. I fight on behalf of people. So you can follow me on any of my social media channels. TikTok. I do a lot of things on TikTok. I do a lot of things on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. My podcast, The Great Minds Project 5.0. And so I talks about a lot of matters. My greatest conversation that I have is about accountability. And I opened this. The cop and Tyreek have the same ego and attitude problems. Both egos escalated the situation. See, you just channeled my thinking. I said, when I opened this, I said, I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that Tyreek couldn't have done something better. I don't want nobody to think that I'm saying it, that he bear no responsibility. Because it's like this. Even when he said, "Why you knocking on my window like that?" I would have let it go right when the officer said, "I was just trying to let you know I was here." We know the officer being a jerk. I would have let it go right there. I'm not going no further with that. So let me say that Tyreek should not even went any further with that, because he already supposed to have been thinking that this officer, he trying to be a jerk. First of all, if you didn't do anything wrong and you got pulled over, then you already know the officer's trying to be a jerk. So now you're supposed to prepare yourself for the nonsense that they about to try on you now, because you know you didn't do anything wrong in the first place. So that's where Tyreek's supposed to have been using this here at, saying, you know what? I know I ain't did nothing. I'm not going to even let him bait me into an arrest, detainment, or anything else. That's where his mindset's supposed to have been at. So he bear the responsibility to think his way around this officer whom he felt was pulling him over for nothing. Now, after he told him to roll down the window, yeah, he could have just rolled down the window, even though he didn't have to. He could have just rolled down the window, and again, following through with the thinking that this officer's up to some nonsense, he could have just rolled down the window. It's like I used to tell people about when people cracking jokes, right? If somebody cracking a joke on you and don't nobody laugh, you take the energy out the joke, right? So sometimes you got to take the energy out of these fools that want to harass you like this by just going, certain things I will comply with, but I ain't complying with nothing that's going to endanger my manhood, period. But rolling down the window, he could have just rolled down the window. He didn't have to, though, but he could have did that. But instead, he sat in there and we ain't heard him say anything. So the officer opened that door now. And the officer aggressively dragged him out of the car. And I'm sure, and we know, that Tyreek could have overpowered that officer easily, but he didn't. So again, that's kudos to Tyreek. That's kudos to him, that he did not overpower that officer, because we already know just from the evidence what happens when an officer say he resisting, and then they say that one phrase that ends up having a man or a woman laying face down on the ground, never to ever speak again. He got a gun, right? So again, for whoever said that, you are absolutely right that both of their egos came into play. But Tyreek have every reason to be pissed off or mad if he's being pulled over for nothing in the first place. Think of that. I'm mad. You pulling me over for nothing. I ain't did nothing. I know I ain't did nothing. And you pulling me over. I'm ticked off because you pulling me over for nothing. I'm trying to get to my game. Then you come knocking on my window as if I don't understand that you just pulled me over and I'm about to roll down the window or get out the car, whatever is necessary to appease you. Come on, y'all. This is just common sense. If the officer pulls you over, whether they right or wrong, it's just common sense for us who are getting pulled over to know that we're going to have to roll down the window or we're going to have to get out the car. Either way, we got to have our ID or our license with us, right? So we're going to give Tyreek that much credit to know that he got to give this guy his ID. And that's what he did. He gave him his ID. The officer went to walk away. He rolled his window up. Obviously, they didn't feel that the man was a threat, or they would have told him to get out the car. while they run his ID. If those officers are from Miami, which we know they are, and Tyreek Hill is a superstar wide receiver for Miami Dolphins, as we know he is, it's reasonable for us to assume that the officers knew who they was pulling over. It's reasonable for us to assume that the officers knew who they was pulling over, right? Listen, that's like living in Chicago in the 80s and 90s, and the police pull over Michael Jordan. They ran his plates. His plates belonged to a Michael Jordan, very expensive $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 sports car. The man gets out, or the man gives up the ID, and now you see his face look like the same Michael Jordan that played for the Chicago Bulls. And these officers live in Chicago. It's not even logical, believable, or conceivable that they would say that they didn't know who Michael Jordan was. Sir, you asked me, was he speeding, yes or no? There's no evidence that he was ever speeding, sir. No evidence whatsoever. The only evidence, video evidence presented by the officers themselves, show the officer sitting in the middle of the road somewhere. And as he was driving by, the officer drove up to his car. This is how slow he was driving. The officer had the opportunity to pull beside his car and talk to him while he's driving, which is dangerous in itself. The officer endangered the public by engaging in a conversation with a moving car. So he was endangering the public as it was trying to engage someone in a conversation while they was driving. But nonetheless, the officer spoke to this man while he was driving and told this man to pull over. Then he said, just pull up there. And Tyreek Hill told this man, okay, and he pulled right up there where the officer said pull to. So, at what point did this video show Tyreek speeding? Show Tyreek driving erratic, reckless, or anything to justify him being pulled over? There's no evidence. And we already know what happens when there's no evidence. If the glove don't fit, come on, y'all. We have to be fair and impartial. Again, we can go back to saying that it escalated quick. Both persons' egos came into play. But when you are at the center of police harassment and your traumas are triggered, ain't no telling how you're going to respond because you've been traumatized by this for so long. You suffer from generational trauma. I suffer from generational trauma right now. Every time the police get near me, I turn on my camera because I am preparing myself for them to pull me over. Although I know I didn't do anything. We call it self-control. Somebody say playing a race card. I'm not playing a race card. You tell me how many white people been killed by white cops. Tell me the statistic on that. Tell me the statistic of how many white people have been killed by white cops or unalived by white cops. Tell me how many tickets have been written by white cops against white citizens. And those citizens said the tickets were false, untrue, never happened. And then tell me how many cases have you seen of white cops unalive, brutally beaten, falsifying evidence against black people? So race is always at the forefront of these issues when there's an interaction with law enforcement. That doesn't mean that it's racist, but race is always at the forefront. That doesn't mean it's a racist act, though, because many of the law, there's more laws on the books criminalizing things that black people do than there are laws on the books that criminalize anything white people do. This is the field that I work in. These are not things that I'm just blowing out of the top of my head. So when we talk about race, race is always going to be at the forefront of any police interaction with a black person. They are trained in the academy, and any officer on here, former officer, veteran officer, military officer, can verify that they're trained to treat black people differently during detainment, during first interview, detainment, arrest, incarceration, interrogation. They're trained to treat us differently because race is always at the forefront of any interaction with law enforcement. Now, some people are racist, yeah. And some people are not. Many are police not. But their trainings tries to indoctrinate them to treat us a certain way that they don't treat their white counterpart. That's just the truth. And I understand that a lot of YT people are not going to agree with this. It's a truth that so many people don't want to accept. I understand that. But it's a truth that must be told. Some guy said Tyreek was being an a-hole. Let's just be honest. And if you heard what I said, sir, I said Tyreek could have handled that better too. I said that. He could have handled that better because when I know that my life, is dependent upon the decision that I make, then I'm going to try to make the best decision for me. Especially when my decision will impact families around me, a lot of people around me. Because, and I'm gonna speak about this, you all. Tyreek may have been a little the word is not pushy that I'm looking for, but I said pushy that I'm looking for, but he may have been a little antsy, right? He may have been a little more antsy. But the officers still have not shown why he pulled him over in the first place. Why did he pull him over in the first place? There is no video evidence to justify the officer pulling him over in the first place. And then I think that Trey said speeding, but where's the video evidence of him speeding at? Because we have video evidence for everything else except him speeding. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this in support of the people that said he was speeding. I'm going to say this, right? And I have to be honest because I'd rather be upfront and honest with you than to be telling you lies, and that's fake stuff to me. being that we know that he was in a rush to get to the game because he's the superstar wide receiver, being that we know that he's in a rush to get to the game, it's reasonable to assume that he could have been speeding, right? It's reasonable. And I want everybody on here. Share out my live feed, y'all. Share out my live feed. I want everybody on here. I want everybody. Oh, yeah, I like that lockup dance that they did at that. And that, yeah, I like that. But I want everybody on here to share out my live feed. And I want everybody on here to be honest with yourself. Tyreek Hill was on his way to his football game where he is the star player of the team. So is it far-fetched to believe that he was speeding? Okay, so now he's speeding. We're going to say, for the sake of argument, he's speeding. And we're going to ride with that concept, right? But once he gave the officer his ID, his license, whatever he gave him, that should have been it, because that's all the officer asked for. He gave him his ID. That should have been the end of the story right there. But no, that wasn't the end of the story. If he was speeding and that justified the officer pulling him over, that's one issue. The officer knocking on his window, that shouldn't even matter to him. That I wouldn't even say nothing about that. That was a waste of breath. That was a gateway to what ended up happening. So the reaction to the officer knocking on the window shouldn't have never even transpired at all. I would never even said anything. Once he gave up his ID or his information and the officer walked away and he rolled up the window, the officer knew that he didn't have to say anything at that point. The man complied. You have his information right there in your hand. You didn't have to say anything. So now the officer's ego flares up and he goes back to the car and say, roll down that window. Roll down that window. I mean, you got my ID. I complied with your order. I gave you my ID. There it is. He said, come on, man, I'm just trying to get to the game. Do what you got to do. Now, I think that I don't support people throwing their titles up during traffic stops. I don't support that. But in this case, I would have understood had Tyreek Hill said, sir, I'm just trying to get to the game. I'm Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver for Miami Dolphins. I'm just trying to get to the game, sir. I would have understood it, right? And see, and this is why I say I don't think that they was trying to, it was just a racist attack, because I think that had he said that, it would have made all the difference. Because if he was speeding, the officer would have said, okay, you got to get that ticket, bro. I got to write you that ticket. Or give him a warning. Tyreek, man, go out there and win for us, man. Because we have seen this in the news on a few other occasions where certain celebrities have been pulled over on their way to the concert and or on their way to some social event. And the officer give them a warning. And I'm not saying I agree with that, because wrong is wrong. Don't give me a ticket because I'm not a celebrity, but don't give the other person a ticket because they're a celebrity. No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that had Tyreek just let the officer know that I'm Tyreek Hill, the wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins. I'm just trying to get to my game, man. I ain't trying to cause no problems with nobody. I think that would have went a long way. What y'all think? He would have gave him a warning if he wasn't heated. I agree. Saying don't knock on my window. Okay. And let's be real, NFL players don't exactly have a track record being model citizens. Okay. But when you talk about Tyreek Hill, the guy who win the games for Miami Dolphins, like the Michael Jordan, like the LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Shaquille O'Neal. See, when you say those names, Kevin Durant's, when you say those names, officers who are from those cities, who are, especially if they like sports, that's not to say they understand, but that's to say that they understand that they're in a rush to get, or they represent our city. And so they give them a little more leeway, and that's understandable, right? And that's why I say that I think that had he just let the officer know who he was, which I, right off the bat, I think the situation would have turned a lot different. But it escalated so quickly, the egos came into play so quickly that the officer began to spiral further out of control, because he even told the other guy, get back. And you don't have to be but 20 feet away from a situation. It's not like it's yellow tape around where a body laying there. The officer didn't want them to be close enough to even hear what was going on. He told the other guy, get all the way back. Then the other guy was parked down the street, and he told him he got to pull off. And then he wanted to arrest him. So the officer definitely had his chest stuck too far out. His ego was out of control. And maybe had the initial interaction been a little more peaceful, his ego would have spiraled out of control as it did. But at the end of the day, Tyreek Hill gave him his ID license. And that should have been the end right there. The officer could have walked back to his car or motorcycle, wrote the ticket, and gave it back to him. Simple as that. Tyreek said, go on, take care of your business, man. He said, go on, take care of your business. He said, man, I'm just trying to get to where I'm going. So me, I would have said, where you going? That you're in a rush to get to. Then he would have said, well, my name is Tyreek. You see my name, Tyreek Hill. And then we got to think of this too. Tyreek Hill probably just assumed that the officer knew who he was. He probably just assumed that the officer knew who he was when he gave him his ID, right? He just assumed that the officers know I'm Tyreek Hill. Not all the time in the heat of, especially if they got something else, if they have another agenda. Nick said race baiting. Race baiting, huh? Not all people watch football. I agree with you there too, sir. Not all people. And that's why I said Tyreek Hill probably just assumed that the officer knew who he was. And so when he said, I'm just trying to get on down to where I'm trying to go, he probably just assumed that because the officer know who he was, that the officer know that the game is about to come on, that the game is about to start or something around that time, and therefore I'm just trying to get to the game. But we can't just assume that. Sometimes we have to make ourselves clear, and in certain situations, if there's no hidden agenda, no hidden motive behind the officers pulling a person over, then I'm inclined to believe that the officers are going to be reasonable. I'm a person that's been harassed by police many, many times in my life. I've seen police corruption up close and personal for many, many years of my life. But I'm still inclined to believe that if the officers do not come to you with a hidden agenda and hidden corrupt motives, then they will reason with you. Because I've had some reason with me on a few occasions as well. They came to me and I was totally wrong. And they was like, matter of fact, just about 6 months ago, I was speeding. And state police pulled me over. And they said, you was going 60 in a 40 or something. And I said, excuse me. I said, I probably was. I said, but there was no other cars on the road, so I really couldn't. I was just zoned out driving with no other cars to kind of determine if I was speeding past cars or whatnot. I said, but I probably was. I accept responsibility. The officer got my ID, went to the car, came back, and the officer said, man, slow down. I said, thank you. And I kept it moving, right? So it's certain, our interactions don't always have to be negative. Sometimes you could take a negative and turn it into a positive just by how you respond to situations, right? I haven't always been a good guy. I haven't always been an understanding guy. I have not always been a compliant guy. Still really ain't no compliant guy, quite as kept, but I'm a reasonable guy. I'm a thinking man. And when we learn how to think, we learn how to sidestep certain things that will derail our growth. And in the case of Tyreek Hill, superstar athlete, all of that stuff aside, we talking about a human being. I don't care about the stature. I'm talking about the human being. I'm talking about the person that the mother gave birth to, not the person who developed the talent to play. When we talk about our humanity, we have to represent our humanity. We have to be held accountable for the representation of our humanity. We cannot allow situations to come about that questions our own humanity. Because for example, if I'm a person that don't use curse words, then it doesn't matter if you make me mad or not. I'm not using the curse word. It's just because I don't use curse words. So if I say that I'm an upright, independent, and fearless human being, then excuse me, then there shouldn't come a time when I'm not upright, independent, and fearless. So in Tyreek Hill's defense, I will say that I do understand how it feels to get pulled over. I do understand how it feels to feel like you didn't do nothing serious. I do understand how it feels to feel pressured by the officer or feel a sense of intimidation. I do understand these things. I do understand how it feels to be profiled and racially profiled. But I also understand hold up, y'all, 1 second. But I also understand what it means to be a thinking man. when I was young and thinking irrationally, impulsively, I didn't give people credit, and I shied away from being a responsibility and being accountable for my own thoughts, my words, and my deeds. But when I grew up, all of the officers that I used to middle finger and that type of, and think about with the middle finger and all of the things that I've been through, I had to go back on that stuff. And I had to say, what part did I play in that? How could this situation have been different had I done something different? Excuse me, you said, oh, your feelings are hurt. Please don't be a cop then. Pins up, I did 28 years in prison. I think I can just leave that there. I'm just speaking of accepting responsibility for the roles that we play in situations that don't turn out good. It's kind of like, here's a perfect example. One of my friends asked me a few years back, after a police involved shooting where a young black guy was unalived by the officers. My friend said, man, you coming out to protest with us? I said, brother, I said, you know how I feel about this. I stand strong and with the people. However, I'm not coming out to protest a police involved shooting of a unarmed black guy if we won't even protest us killing one another. How about that? Let's accept responsibility. I'm not saying that what they did is right at all. But I think the problem exists in our own communities amongst our own selves. And so some of my friends would get mad at me. I don't care. So what? Until we start holding one another accountable, to do what's right by us, through us, and to us, then we should never be sitting up here putting all our eggs in a basket of complaining about what they did to us. Because you can give me the gun, but you can't make me pull the trigger. You can give me the gun, but you can't make me pull the trigger. It's all about responsibility and accountability, holding one another accountable. Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my sister's keeper? Am I the keeper of my community? If you can answer yes to that question, and this means that you want to be held responsible, you want to be held accountable, and you think that your conditions can be better, and you will step up and take your place in the affairs of real people, real men and women who are putting their lives on the line to keep the community safe. And I'm not talking about no police. I'm talking about the people in the community. Some of our people have passed away, been unalived, brutally beaten, locked up, etc. for some of the rights that we enjoy today. Let us not throw all of that progress away because we acting on our ego. And I'm talking about police. I'm talking about civilians. And I say civilians, not athletes. I'm talking about civilians. I'm talking to the humanity of the people. Listen, I ain't gonna hold y'all up too much longer. I just wanted to say, I do feel like the officer did too much. I truly do. And I truly believe that on many occasions, the officers do too much. When it's time to do too much, they don't do nothing. But when it's time to be moderate, they are excessive. But again, if we know this, it's like if we know a pothole is in the middle of that street, why would we come flying down that street with low profile rims or tires? Why? We got to be responsible for driving down that street that we know has potholes that's going to crack my rim because it cracked so many other people's rim that we witnessed. So let's not be sitting up there blaming the police for all the wrong decisions that we make sometimes. And police, let's not go blaming the citizen because they don't want to comply with an illegal order, instruction, or if they're traumatized. You can't expect for me to respond in a manner that you want me to respond if I'm traumatized, if I'm feeling wronged at the time or entitled at the time. Because I seen entitlement on full display in the video from both sides. I seen entitlement. I seen a control freak. I seen egos clashing. But what I didn't see is people treating each other like human beings. And that's where we lose at every single time. If I can see you as a human being, I can follow your instructions as a human being. Whether I'm an officer, whether I'm a civilian, whether I'm an athlete, whoever the hell you are. If I see you as a human being, I will acknowledge you as a human being. I will respond to you as a human being. But as soon as I lose sight of your humanity, by whatever things are distracting me, trauma, etc., I will shy away from rationale, and my responses more likely will be impulsive. And I think that was the case on both ends. Although I believe that the officers were supposed to uphold the law, and they was doing too much. With that, I'm going to close, y'all. I'm going to say peace and love to those within the sound of my voice. And for those who cannot hear the sound of my voice, I'm asking that you all pass along the message because someone needs to be inspired.